You don't know what it is to be a ghost in your own family until you're sitting at their Christmas dinner listening to them plan the funeral of your life's work. The fire crackled in my parents' Lake Forest hearth, casting dancing shadows over faces I'd known for 32 years. Faces currently fixed in expressions of genteel pity, aimed at me. "So the board has made the difficult decision," my Uncle Richard was saying, swirling his bourbon with the gravitas of a coroner. "The Blackstone offer is the only viable path. The brand is exhausted. The market has moved on." He was talking about Wick & Son Fine Furnishings, my company, the company my great-grandfather founded in 1912, the company I'd run as CEO for the last 8 years, turning it from a dusty, fading heirloom into the most sought-after sustainable luxury furniture brand in North America. And he, Richard Wick, my father's brother, and chairman of our family advisory board, was announcing its sale to a private equity firm that would strip its assets and burn the name for scrap at my own parents' Christmas Eve dinner. My father, seated at the head of the table, nodded somberly. "It's a tragedy, but Richard's right. The numbers don't lie. We have to be realistic, Harry." The numbers. They were looking at the deliberately depressed quarterly reports Richard had been feeding them for 18 months, reports that hid the explosive growth of our new direct-to-consumer platform, the waiting list for our carbon-negative legacy line, the secret $50 million pre-order with a certain European royal household. I took a slow sip of ice water, the chill grounding me. My sister, Beatrice, reached over and patted my hand. "It's not your fault, Jules. You tried. Some things just aren't meant to last." Some things. Like my 5-year fight against their passive aggression, like the hundreds of nights I'd spent in the workshop perfecting a joinery technique instead of at their country club fundraisers. Like my marriage, which had collapsed 2 years ago under the weight of, when are you going to get a real CEO job at a real firm? I set the glass down. The crystal rang with a pure, sharp note. The Blackstone deal. When does it close? "First week of January," Richard said, unable to hide a flicker of triumph. "The papers are being drawn up now. A clean exit. We salvaged some family capital from the situation." The situation. Me. The artist who'd cared more about wood grain than balance sheets. The disappointment.
My mother, elegant in pearls, sighed. "We'll find something for you, Harry. Richard's firm always needs good analysts. It won't be the same, but it's a start." A start. At 32. After building a brand worth, according to my actual books, just shy of $400 million, I smiled. It was a small, tight thing. "Thank you. That's very kind." I excused myself to get some air. On the stone terrace overlooking the frozen lake, I pulled out my phone, not to call my lawyer, but to open a secure app. A single notification glowed. Asset transfer complete. Wick Heritage Trust activated. I breathed out, watching the plume of vapor vanish into the black, starless sky. For 18 months, I'd known this was coming. Richard had been maneuvering, consolidating shares from elderly aunts, whispering to my father about my risky eco-obsessions. He wanted the company liquidated so he could claim his peace and wipe the slate of my influence clean. So I'd built a new slate. In total secrecy, I'd created a parallel corporate structure, the Wick Heritage Trust, a private, mission-driven holding company. Over those 18 months, through a series of shell companies and silent partnerships, the trust had been buying up the company's debt. Not from banks, but from the secondary market. Penny notes Richard thought were worthless. As of 4:47 p.m. that afternoon, the trust now held 67% of Wick & Son's senior secured debt, the debt Richard's Blackstone deal needed to clear.
He thought he was selling a company. He was about to discover he'd sold its corpse, while I walked away with its beating heart. The French doors slid open. My cousin Philip, Richard's son and a junior VP at Goldman, stepped out. Tough break, man. But hey, private equity's not the end. They might keep you on as a consultant for the transition. I took the cigar. A consultant. Yeah, you know the product. They'll need someone to explain it before they break it down. I clipped the end, lit it, drew in the smoke. It was rich, expensive, and tasted like the last vestige of the old world. Philip, I exhaled, what's the most important rule of acquisitions? He grinned. Due diligence. Know what you're going. Exactly. I met his eyes. Merry Christmas. I left him on the terrace, confusion just starting to cloud his smug certainty. Inside, the conversation had moved on to Beatrice's children's ski trip. I was already forgotten. The problem? Solved. I looked at the portraits of stern Wick ancestors lining the hallway. They'd built with their hands, with integrity, with a legacy in mind. Richard saw only a balance sheet to zero out. He'd forgotten what we did with dead wood in this family. We didn't discard it. We carved it into something new. My name is Harry Wick. For 8 years, I served as the fourth-generation CEO of a company everyone in my family considered a charming relic. They tolerated my leadership because I was a Wick, but they never respected it. To them, sustainable luxury was a marketing gimmick. My success, a 1,200% growth in online revenue, the waiting lists, the industry awards, was written off as a fluke, a fortunate niche. The contempt crystallized with the royal contract, a discreet commission to furnish a series of historic estates with furniture that was both museum quality and carbon negative. It was the crowning achievement of my life's work. The profit margin alone would fund the company for a decade. When I presented it to the family board, Richard had scoffed. Handcrafted? Each piece taking months? The capital tie-up is absurd. We should license the name to a high-volume manufacturer in Vietnam. That's where the real money is. He didn't see a masterpiece. He saw an inefficient asset. That was the day I understood. The enemy wasn't outside. It was in the boardroom, sharing my last name. I began the Wick Heritage Trust that night, not as a hostile maneuver, but as a preservation society. My chief financial officer, Claire, one of 3 people I trusted implicitly, helped me structure it. We used my personal capital, the proceeds from the silent sale of my minority stakes in 2 tech startups I'd advised years before. The strategy was simple. Become the company's own shadow bank. We bought our debt for cents on the dollar from funds looking to offload distressed assets. Richard's misleading reports had depressed the value, making it cheap. Every quarter he sandbagged, we bought more. Simultaneously, I created a new brand, Hearth and Hold. It was Wick & Son's soul without the baggage. The same mastercrafts people, the same sustainable forests, but modern designs, a digital native experience. We launched it in whispers to a small, curated clientele. Its profits, substantial, were funneled back into buying more Wick & Son debt. I lived a double life. By day, the harried CEO trying to placate a board demanding faster returns. By night, the architect of an escape hatch for everything the company stood for. The final piece was the intellectual property. Wick & Son's true value wasn't in its inventory. It was in its designs, its patents on non-toxic biopolymer finishes, its proprietary forest management contracts. Over 6 months, I legally and quietly transferred the IP to the Heritage Trust through a series of licensing and R&D partnership agreements. On paper, it looked like prudent diversification. In reality, it was a brain transplant. By last October, the trust controlled the debt. By November, it owned the future. All that remained was the shell, the name, the physical showrooms Richard coveted for their real estate value. He walked right into the trap, negotiating fiercely with Blackstone for a sale price that assumed full ownership of a going concern. He didn't know he was selling a company that owed its soul to another entity, an entity I controlled. The Christmas Eve dinner was his victory lap. It was also the night my dead man's switch activated. At midnight, an encrypted packet would be delivered to the board, the SEC, and the Financial Times. The full, audited financials of Wick & Son, revealing both the concealed profitability and the trust's controlling debt position. It would blow the Blackstone deal out of the water and expose Richard's mismanagement. But I wanted to see their faces first. I wanted to sit in the room as the ghost they dismissed and feel the tectonic plates of their certainty begin to shift. The confrontation didn't happen on Christmas Day. It happened on December 27th, in the sterile conference room of our corporate offices. Richard had called an urgent board meeting to finalize the Blackstone terms. I arrived last. The room was thick with the scent of ambition and expensive coffee. Richard, my father, two elderly aunts who held proxy votes, and the family lawyer were present. "Harry, good you're here," Richard began without looking up from his papers. "We're signing the letter of intent today. Blackstone is being generous given the circumstances. Your transition will be handled with dignity." "Transition?" I asked, taking my seat at the opposite end of the long table. "Your resignation, effective upon close. It's standard. We'll announce it as a mutual decision, you pursuing other opportunities." "I see." I opened my briefcase, not to take something out, but to place my phone on the table, recording. "And the debt. Blackstone is assuming it."
Of course, it's part of the package. Clean break. All $42 million of it? Richard finally looked up, frowning. The secured debt is $38 million. Don't you know your own balance sheet? I know the reported balance sheet, I said. I'm talking about the actual senior secured debt held by the Wick Heritage Trust. Silence. The lawyer, Edgerton, leaned forward. The what? The Wick Heritage Trust, a private holding company. It currently holds 67% of Wick & Son's outstanding senior notes. I have the certificates here. I slid a folder down the polished table. It stopped in front of my father. He opened it, his face paling as he scanned the documents. "Harry, what is this?" "It's an insurance policy, Dad. Against exactly this moment." Richard snatched the folder. "This is nonsense. These are forgeries. We settled those notes years ago." "Check the SUSIP numbers, Richard. You didn't settle them. You wrote them down as losses and sold them to a distressed debt fund in Delaware. The trust bought them from that fund. Over the last 18 months. I kept my voice flat, instructional. "The debt hasn't been settled. It's been consolidated by me." My father's voice was a whisper. "You'd been buying the company's own debt?" "To protect it. From him." I nodded at Richard, whose face was mottling with rage. "The Blackstone deal can't close without the trust's approval, and the trust won't approve a fire sale that destroys a 100-year legacy for a quick payout." Richard slammed his fist on the table. "This is treachery. You've conspired against your own family." "No, Richard. You conspired to sell our heritage to strip miners. I conspired to save it. The trust isn't hostile. It's the majority creditor. It has first claim on all assets, and it has a proposal." I slid a second folder to Edgerton. "The trust will forgive the debt in exchange for 100% ownership of the Wick & Son brand name, its remaining inventory, and its physical properties. The shareholders, all of you, will walk away with nothing from this sale, because there will be no sale. But you also walk away without the burden of the debt Richard accrued." The aunts gasped. My father stared at me as if I'd spoken a foreign tongue. "You're stealing the company," Richard hissed.
I'm accepting it as payment for a debt you incurred, a debt you hid. If you'd like to contest it, we can do so in court. I have forensic accountants ready to testify about the financial misrepresentations you've made to this board for the last 2 years. I have emails where you discuss depressing stock value to force a sale. I have the real books. I leaned forward. Would you like to send them to the SEC now or after we adjourn?
The room was a frozen diorama of shattered entitlement. Richard looked at Edgerton, who was frantically scanning the debt certificates, his face grim. He gave a minute, hopeless shake of his head. "The trust's offer is legally sound, Richard," Edgerton murmured. "More than sound. It's generous, given the alternative." "The alternative being bankruptcy and fraud charges?" I clarified softly. My father found his voice. "Harry, the royal contract? The waiting lists? Are those real? Very real. They're not on Wick & Sons books. They're held by a separate operating entity, wholly owned by the trust. The profitable, growing part of the business. The part Richard told you was a fantasy." I stood. "The choice is yours. Accept the trust's terms, a clean, private transfer, or fight it publicly. But know this, if you fight, I will use every document, every email, every hidden report to prove that you," I looked at Richard, "were deliberately sabotaging this company for personal gain, and that you," I looked at my father and the aunts, "were willfully blind. The Wick name won't survive that scandal." I walked to the door. "You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow. The trust's lawyers are on standby." I didn't wait for a reply. The silence behind me was the sound of a dynasty gently, irrevocably, passing from one set of hands to another, from custodians of ledgers to a custodian of craft. They signed. At 4:58 p.m. the next day, pride was expensive. Survival was cheap. The transfer was swift and quiet. The Blackstone deal evaporated with a terse press release citing unforeseen structural complexities. My family was left with their personal wealth intact, but their narrative in tatters. The story that I was a failed artist, a naive steward, was dead. In its place was a more uncomfortable truth. They had been outmaneuvered, outthought, and outnegotiated by the son they'd patronized. My father called me a week later. "Your mother would like to see the new workshop," he said, his voice strained. "It's not a workshop, Dad. It's a campus, and she's welcome anytime." A long pause. "We didn't know, Harry. You didn't ask. You saw what you wanted to see, the struggling son. It was easier than seeing a successor." I hung up. There was no rage left, just a vast, quiet space where their approval used to live. Hearth and Hold launched publicly in the spring. The press kit didn't mention the Wick name. It focused on the craft, the sustainability, the art. It sold out in 14 minutes. The royal contract pieces were unveiled at a private exhibition, garnering coverage in Architectural Digest and the Wall Street Journal. The article that mattered came from Forbes. "The Quiet Coup: How a Fourth-Generation CEO Saved His Family Business by Buying Its Debt." It laid out the strategy in broad strokes, praising the brilliant debt-for-equity rescue. My photo was alongside it. I wasn't smiling. I was looking at a piece of walnut, my hand on a chisel. Richard resigned from all family boards. He lives in Florida now, playing a lot of golf. Beatrice sends me polite emails about her children. My parents visit the campus occasionally, moving through the light-filled ateliers like tourists in a museum of their own inheritance. It is Christmas again. Not at the Lake Forest house, but in my loft above the flagship Hearth and Hold workshop in Hudson Valley. The space is full of the scent of pine, cedar, and fresh-cut wood. My team, my chosen family, is here. Claire, my CFO. Marco, the master craftsman who stayed with me. Lena, our head designer. We drink local whiskey and listen to jazz. There is no board, no agenda, no unsolicited advice. Just the quiet hum of creation and respect. My phone lights up. A text from my father. Saw the feature in the Times. The Zenith console is magnificent. Your great-grandfather would be proud. We are proud. Merry Christmas, son. I read it twice. Then I type back, thank you. Merry Christmas. I don't say I forgive them. I don't say all is forgotten. Some fractures become part of the grain, giving the wood its character. You don't hide them. You fill them with gold and call it kintsugi. I look out at the snow-dusted courtyard below. The old Wick & Son showrooms are being renovated. They will become public galleries, teaching spaces for woodworking. Temples to slow craft in a fast world. The name will remain, but its meaning will be transformed. Not a burden, but a beacon. They spent years seeing me as deadwood, suitable only for the fire. So I became the fire. And from the ashes of their expectations, I built a home. A home with no ghosts, only light and wood, and the profound, unshakable quiet of work that matters.